I mean, it was an option between, bringing you the original or bringing you the reworked remix by Black Coffee. And I thought, let's just go with the original today, Hugh Masinga. Sometimes it's a novel idea to just stick to the roots of something, right? That was the late, great Ndate Hugh Masinga with Stimela. And that is how we open up the show today. It's a booming Thursday afternoon. So much happening if you switch on the 24-hour news channels. There is a lot happening in South Africa, I tell you today. I feel sorry for all of my colleagues who have to keep abreast of everything. And then on the side, on platforms such as X, there is a roaring social media debate. Is it a snake or is it a bird? I think we are back to the days of is it gold or is it blue? Is it a snake or is it a bird? I don't know. I have no idea. But that is the roaring debate of the day on social media. We've got so much coming up by way of conversation today. We are going to be catching up with Natale Labia, who is a writer, and the article that we're unpacking is how baby boomers ruined the world. And this is an opinion piece that was featured in the Daily Maverick, how baby boomers ruined the world. And we're going to find out exactly how baby boomers left the world upside down and in complete disarray for millennials to have to fix everything. And also coming up on the show, stages, pages, screens, and more. We're catching up with internationally awarded and recognized South African designer. He's part of what I call the new school of cool. Lukhanyo Mdingi is going to be joining us as we talk around the exhibition Provenance Part 2, which opens up tonight at Constitution Hill. And then on the other side of 2 o'clock, we're looking at legal matters, planning for divorce, how to financially prepare yourself for divorce. This should be an interesting conversation. And I had this novel idea of trying to package all of our marriage conversations into one easily accessible portal on our podcast, right? Because we have a lot in by way of recurring themes when it comes to particularly marriage, customary, civic, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And once we figured out how we can do that so that we can just direct you to one place where you can listen to all the podcasts as they relate to marriage and divorce. I'll also tell you a little bit more about what's coming up on the other side of 2 o'clock closer to that time. 086 000 2032 is the number that you can call us on if you'd like to go live with us with your thoughts and opinions, or 061 410 4107 is our WhatsApp line. Listen, if you have a thought as well, is it a bird or is it a snake? Feel free to let us know on WhatsApp. You can always drop us a WhatsApp voice note on 061 410 4107. Let's take a quick break. We'll come right back.
Unforgettable happens when the young and the old know they can surf, snorkel, fish, enjoy whale watching, and end the day with sundowners Neshisanyama. KwaZulu-Natal is a jewel waiting to happen. Ziyakhipha with hiking, horse riding, biking, ziplining, and mountain biking adventures waiting for the fearless and the bold. Unforgettable happens here. Zwagala. Brought to you by Tourism KwaZulu-Natal.
Masanda wanna trust their creativity to ensure Yanga gets nothing from Mzansi's capital city. But the gentlemen from the east want to leave Kabuyelo in tears. This is the second leg quarter-final battle of the CAF Champions League. Experience Africa's beautiful game. Mamelodi Sundowns versus Young Africans on Friday, 5 April at 8 p.m. Live on SABC Sport on DTT Channel 4. Also available on SABC Plus and SABCSport.com. # we love it here. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport. For the love of the game.
Arts, culture, and robust conversations with Bridget Masinga.
So, how did the baby boomers ruin the world? I have no idea, but this is why we have Natale Lobia joining us, who is a writer on economy and finance, on the economy and finance, and partner and chief economist of a global investment firm. The piece is via the Daily Maverick, and stereotypes of millennials are usually very much not flattering, this we know. However, there is a series of new studies that now suggest and show that their predicament is not of their own making, and that many of the problems faced by those who were born after 1980, such as youth unemployment, the cost of living, crippling student debt, and unaffordable housing rather, are really a consequence of those who came before. Not my words. Natalia, how are you doing this afternoon?
Good, thanks, Bridget. Thanks so much for having me on the show, and just to say hello to all the listeners.
I think it's more Natale, if I'm not mistaken.
That's Natale spot on.
Thank you so much. Thank you for taking the time today and being in conversation with us. Much appreciated. Listen, before we even get to the nitty-gritties of this piece, whenever we pit the generations against each other, we often find each other at opposite ends of the room and opinion, because nobody is going to take responsibility for what they did, and everyone's just going to shift the blame somewhere else.
I think that's absolutely right, and I've been not surprised by the reaction that this piece has gotten, but definitely some of the comments on social media have pointed to exactly that. So clearly it has kicked off a vibrant debate, shall we say.
We love to hear it. So the data suggests that millennials are the first generation in history to be worse off than the generation before them. Give us some context around this, and how is this evidenced?
Sure. I think one has to sort of start with the big picture. And if we think about just what our parents' lives were like, particularly when they were in their late 20s, early 30s, 40s, I think it's very clear that their lives were very different to ours. And that's not just in South Africa. It's really a global phenomenon. And the data is showing increasingly in places like the US, in Europe, in Australia, and in South Africa, that not only have in the last 10, 15 years have wages stagnated in real terms, but the cost of really critical things like house prices, so access to home ownership has gone up really materially, exponentially, making those first kind of steps into up the property ladder increasingly tough. But at the same time, things like job market security has declined all over the world. And the wages that people are earning from just having a normal job just are not able to afford the kind of secure lifestyle that many people in as I say, kind of globally were able to afford 30, 40 years ago. And I think this is also things like education and healthcare. Increasingly, those access to those what at least in the US and in Europe had been seen as kind of public goods are becoming increasingly expensive and hard to access. And I think this is really a question of inequality, but specifically the type of inequality that we're talking about today and that I raised in my piece is intergenerational inequality, which I think has been somewhat passed over. And to get back to those kind of stereotypes, why has intergenerational inequality increased? If you ask a lot of the boomers in the room, they'll tell you it's because millennials are spoiled and entitled and lazy, and they don't have any savings because they spend all their money on avocado toast, which they want to Instagram. But the reality is more structural. And I think that's what I wanted to raise to really kick off this what I think is an important debate.
And you're right by saying that oftentimes there are stereotypes associated with millennials, laziness and entitlement, and then obviously we millennials kick that even further down to generation whatever. So you guys are far worse. The article also points that the problems that were created by boomers are growing and will ultimately sneak up on us as if though overnight. But we can't claim, Natale, that we aren't aware that there is a legacy of issues and problems that were left.
No, absolutely. I think it's in the last, the catalyst for a lot of what we're talking about was the financial crisis, the crash in 2008, 2009, and what has kind of subsequently happened in the US, in Europe with the Eurozone crisis, and in South Africa very much, has been a stagnation of productivity and a stagnation of real wages. And that has meant that this generation, for which the last kind of 14, 15 years should have been a period of great opportunity, entering the job market, feeling better off, feeling capable of buying homes, etc., just didn't happen. So I think that's the key that now we're seeing in the data really starting to play out.
Let's also interrogate a little bit some of the concerns and the issues that you raise that, the data points were created by the generations before. What are we looking at? And in terms of maybe even what are the corrective measures? Because I would then probably render that millennials don't want to leave that or leave the world in a similar mess for their children, and millennials now being parents themselves.
Yeah, well, a lot of interesting points there to unpack. I think first of all, maybe I just need to kind of clarify a bit of what I mean when I say kind of boomers ruin the world. I'm not saying that consciously at some point, like in 1960, a bunch of people got in a room and decided to like screw over their kids. The fact is that this was just a series of policy decisions that were made by the people in power from the 60s, 70s, even kind of through to the 80s, and kind of culminating with the ultimate boomer figure being a guy like Bill Clinton. And I think the decisions that were made specifically in the 80s meant that they were they were short-sighted and they were inherently self-interested. because what it meant is they were locking in all of the gains in wealth that they had accumulated over that generation, and through policies ensuring that those were not distributed to the next generations. And I think debt is a critical part of that, because you had a generation that was living, specifically if I'm talking about the West, the US, Europe, but also South Africa to a degree, that borrowing was funding these welfare states, providing free access to all this stuff, and in addition, extremely lavish pensions. So by the time we got to kind of 2010, the game was up. These countries are now far too indebted for any of those benefits to ever assist with the next generation. And the guys who put that all in place are sitting pretty in their kind of multi-million dollar, euro, pound properties, which the young, or multi-million rand properties, which the young could never hope to have access to.
And, as you talk about policy, I'm then thinking, obviously, the policies that baby boomers chose to prioritize and those that they chose to ignore evidently have an effect on generations to come, not just us, but also, I guess, generations going into the future. And then that sort of highlights for me issues around things, for instance, like equality and gender gap pay and things like that. Can we track all of those systems back to the boomers? Basically, I'm trying to blame a boomer for why I earn 30% less than my male counterparts.
Look, I think these are the kind of intersections of inequalities.
Yeah.
Which is not just really damaging to the economy, but it's extremely corrosive to society and to the social fabric. And I think that's what I was trying to bring out in my piece. It's exacerbated social tensions and conflict. But as ever, South Africa is a fascinating test tube, because all of these dynamics that we're talking about are almost more extreme in South Africa than anywhere else. And that comes down to not just intergenerational inequality, but obviously racial, structural inequality, and also gender, as you say, gender pay levels being completely out of whack. So I think it's and in many respects, a lot of that does come from the legacy of apartheid, which by and large was never unraveled, and that's meant that kind of the country and the economy is saddled with this hangover. And I think in many respects, apartheid in itself was this kind of white boomer construct to essentially hold all the value in an economy for a privileged minority.
Yeah. Let's hold it there for a second as we jump into the headline news with Anne Musa, and we'll come right back and continue our conversation.
Good afternoon. Thanks, Bridget. In the headlines, former National Assembly Speaker Nosiviwe Mapisa-Nqakula in an affidavit says her release on bail will not pose a threat to the interests of justice. She's appearing in the Pretoria Magistrates Court where she's applying for bail, which the state will not oppose. Raj Palmakun, the CEO of the new Newland PX terminal at the Port of Durban, says it will help to alleviate freight congestion between the country's two economic hubs on the N3 between Johannesburg and Durban. And the executive mayor of the Polokwane municipality in Limpopo, John Mpie, says although residents' demands for basic services are justified, he believes today's shutdown is politically motivated. The shutdown entails the suspension of the delivery of basic services. I'll have details on these and other stories at 2.
You're listening to Bridget Masinga on SAFM.
Catching up with today, writer of The Economy and Finance and partner and chief economist of a global investment firm, also wrote an opinion piece in the Daily Maverick. How the baby boomers ruined the world. Has the baby boomers failed to pass on a decent standard of living for the next generation? 086 000 2032 is the number you can always give us on if you have an opinion, or 061 410 4107 is our WhatsApp line if you want to share your opinion or your perspective on this. Part of the article that Natalie wrote said that he makes reference to a few authors and a few analysts, and he says that the authors found that millennials born in the late 1980s earned on average 8% less at the age of 30 than their counterparts from Generation X did at the same age. Very worrying, as you've heard him talk about the sort of stagnation in incomes for millennials, contrary to the rising cost of living. But you also say, you don't entirely bash the boomers, because you also say in your article that they're not entirely to blame, nor should they be blamed for everything that's gone wrong.
That's true. I think one has to be slightly biased slightly balanced when it comes to the topic at hand. But I think what I tried to do with the article, and I think that's where a discussion like this is so important, is to raise these issues, which I think are overlooked, and kind of and see what comes out of it.
Natalia, are you still there? Okay.
Yeah.
Listen, he's not giving, I'm reading the subtext of the text, and he's not giving the boomers any sort of reprieve. He's like, yeah, okay. Like, you're not to blame for everything, but 80% of everything is your fault. You also mentioned that government programs, things like Social Security and other entitlements that run up huge debts, are now actually absorbing, the taxes that are paid by millennials. Expand a little bit on this for us.
Sure. I think as I mentioned earlier, the kind of systems that were put in, that were created by that boomer generation in the kind of 60s, 70s, 80s, have just become overly expensive and extremely, especially as populations grown, and that has meant that the global debt metrics are worsening rapidly, and this has led to a lot of kind of social upheaval. I'll give you the example in France of the protests last year to reduce the retirement age to increase the retirement age from, I think it was 61 to 63 or something. And these protests went on and on and on. But ultimately, you can't have everyone retiring at 61. But that's just, in my mind, a great example of how a number of people are just so resistant to kind of give away the benefits that they had accrued. And I think this is particularly, being proven to be true with much higher interest rates. You've seen kind of indebted economies in the decade after the financial crisis accumulating debt rapidly, but with negligible costs of debt. It meant that ultimately there was a lot more breathing room. But even in the US now, the deficits that are being run means that the interest rate expense, because interest rates have gotten so much higher, are just consuming a larger and larger portion of the fiscus, which is inherently unsustainable.
Yeah. So how do we then address, the social tensions, the intergenerational social tensions that you've highlighted with this piece?
It's a very tough question. I think there are two kind of schools of thought on this. The one is that we need to kind of rethink the structure of the global economy. And that would be the kind of classic Marxist approach that the system is so rigged, the system is so unfair for the majority that this can't be a kind of patchwork approach. That actually the entire thing needs to be kind of reworked. And then the alternative would be a more kind of incremental approach whereby, little victories could add up to real change. I think at the end of the day, on some level, this situation will sort itself out because of two things. One, generations will change. So, the elderly, won't be around forever. And the issues that are important to young people today as they get older, obviously things change a bit. But data actually shows that the issues that millennials are kind of most or significantly focused on, things like climate change and things like human rights and gender equality and racial equality, things, Black Lives Matter, Me Too, all of these things, that these are real, that the young people are really, really motivated on these topics and continue to be. That it's not a question of people being motivated in their early 20s and then as soon as they've turned 30, they just don't care anymore. And I think you're going to see these issues continue to be important into the next 10, 15, 20 years. So I think, I might sound like I'm being kind of a harbinger of doom and rather pessimistic about this, but actually I'm pretty optimistic that the next generation, as they move into positions of kind of real decision making, and as the older generations, the Bidens and the Trumps and these guys, even in South Africa, I think if there's any country that has a lot of these old chaps sitting in cabinets and parliament, but they're not going to be around forever. So I think that there will be real change that needs to happen. Yeah.
And just by way of closing, as you say, there will be change because generations do change. I wonder, though, are we going to see that change happen rapidly and swiftly enough that it has a significant and positive impact on the future lives of Gen Z and Gen A as they then move into adulthood?
Yeah, I mean that's extremely hard to know, and I think a big part of that question is climate change, because obviously humanity is lagging behind, and a lot of young people feel very seriously that more needs to be done, but a lot of the politicians who are a lot older haven't really taken this on board and are not cooperating. So it is kind of a race against time. But in the piece, I say, Varoufakis, who was the ex-Greek finance minister, who actually was citing an Irish writer, Bertrand Russell, when he said that the young people of today, have two options. You can be kind of ironically sensible, and you can try to adapt yourself to the world around you, or you can be mad and you can try to adapt the world to your own ideas of how it should be. I think I definitely feel like it's time for the latter, and I think young people are increasingly showing that they've got no option but to be a bit mad and to try and change things.
You've sparked the spirits of Wendy in Nelspruit, who's a baby boomer, and she wants to weigh in on your thoughts on this. 086 000 2032 is the number you can call us on if you have an opinion or a comment to share, or 061 410 4107 is our WhatsApp line. Let's go out to Wendy in Nelspruit. How are you doing, Wendy?
Hello.
Hi.
Wendy. Hi. I'd like to speak as a baby boomer, and I think that this needs to be said.
Wendy?
Hello?
Wendy, you're not audible, my doll. Can you speak up for us just a little bit?
Okay, is it better now?
Much better.
Okay. I'd like to speak up as a baby boomer and say that I think this is very one-sided and actually proves more so that the millennials are such whiners. We were brought into the world at a time when everything's changing. We were caught between looking after our parents and looking after our children. And this has been a case all over the world as things change, and specifically of late. And I would say that to put all the blame on the baby boomers for making money is totally unfair. We didn't make money. We had to spend our money on bringing up our children and just surviving.
Thank you so much for the call, Wendy. We just heard you. The line wasn't quite audible, but we got the gist. I think Natalie got the gist of it. Wendy's saying you're being very one-sided. I got that strongly. Very one-sided because boomers being born at a time when things were changing, and they were caught between, and these are her words, caught between looking after themselves and looking after their children. So why are you blaming everything on them?
Well, thanks, Wendy. Thanks for the comment. I think fundamentally one of the points that does need to be made is that kind of all boomers are not they're not all created equally. They're not all the same. And when I say kind of it wasn't as if they were all coordinated in their efforts. I think it was kind of an unintended, and I'm sure for a lot of boomers, when they look at the state of the global economy and the sort of lack of productivity in SA and all over the world, it's of great concern. But I think the fundamental issue that bears out in the data is that there was a concentration of asset wealth in one generation at the expense of generations to come. And I think that is, it's not because that's what the boomers set out to do. It is kind of what happened. So it's not like I'm whining. I'm not complaining. I'm just pointing out the kind of the realities of the global economy. And I think, some of the comments that then follows that, well, that's fine because the boomers aren't going to be around forever. So that wealth will be inherited. But the problem is that means that the wealth will go into a smaller pocket.
Oh, no. Our Skype link just ended very abruptly on us. But Natalie, we thank you for the time. And I think it ended right on time before you got into hotter waters with baby boomers out there. I appreciate the time with Natalie Lebia, who is a writer on the economy and finance. And he wrote that piece in the Daily Maverick, How Baby Boomers Ruined the World. Let's take a quick break here and then we'll come right back on the other side of this and continue with stages, pages, screens and more.
Star-crossed meetings between wild animals and people sometimes happen. In fact, they happen more often than we think. Some very special people in Africa find themselves in these highly unusual friendships, and they wouldn't change it for the world. The only word that can really describe what they're experiencing is love. We follow these poignant stories and show the rest of the world how love goes wild. Channel your best adventure with Love Goes Wild, weekdays at 4:30 p.m. only on
Aston Villa have found comfort on the top half, and they want maximum points to retain their decent position.
Putting back, and this time, Guardiola is on! The equaliser belongs to Aston Villa!
Yet the Bees want to cause havoc and deprive the Villains by registering an away victory.
Wissart tried one of them in the first half, he's finished it in the second, and Brentford have turned this round.
This is the Premier League. Catch the exciting clash between Aston Villa FC and Brentford FC on Saturday, 6 April at 3 p.m. live on SABC3. Also available on SABC Plus and SABCSport.com. Hashtag We Love It Here. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport. For the love of the game.
The Full Circle with Bridget Masinga. Monday to Friday, 1 to 3 p.m.
As we race against time now in our final moments of this first hour, we're catching up with the joint winner of the LVMH Karl Lagerfeld Prize, also announced as the Ameri Prize winner last year in 2023, walking away with $100,000 grant in a year-long mentorship program, is a Cape Town-based, internationally awarded and recognized South African designer. Lukhanyo Ndingi is joining me on the line. How are you doing this afternoon?
Hi, how are you? How are you?
I'm fantastic, thank you. I know I catch you in the moments as you prepare for Provenance Part 2, which is set to open tonight at Constitution Hill. Very exciting, but firstly, congratulations on the Ameri Prize 2023.
Sorry, we're breaking up. I'm having a difficult time hearing you.
Oh, it must. I think it's the network. I'm saying I know that we are catching you as you do the final touches for the opening of Provenance Part 2 tonight at Constitution Hill.
Yes. So we're actually really excited. I have the whole team here from Lukhanyo Ndingi and as well as our fellow collaborators being Vanilla Khoza and his team and as well as the Mana team. So we're pretty much finalizing the last details of this exhibition. We're really excited about it.
Yeah. Give us a bit of insight, because we don't have much time now, unfortunately, Lukhanyo. Give us a bit of insight in as far as Provenance Part 2. A lot of us are familiar with you, obviously, as an internationally awarded South African designer. So I guess this is where visual art meets the art of fashion design.
People know the label is predominantly clothing design, but we really wanted to change this time around by focusing on a research project called the Provenance, where we really bring in a sensibility of art within the practice of our label. So the focuses on Bantu heritage within the context of literature, music, and as well as textiles. And what we really wanted to do was to use research spanning over 200 years to see and understand within these three themes that we're essentially showcasing tonight, what is the foundation of them and how do they essentially inform a contemporary world today.
And a lot actually of your creative, from previous conversations, a lot of your creative process and your creative output very much intersects the responsibility towards cultural and traditional knowledge preservation and, of course, contemporary art.
Correct. I think what we've done this time around is that my peers and myself are no longer pertaining ourselves to one particular practice. I think that we have appreciation for art and culture as a whole. And what we're trying to do is to lean on to one another to see how we can expand our point of view and not necessarily pertaining it just to one particular medium.
For those folks who are not also clued in just on the essence of Lukhanyo Ndingi and how, as you say, how the legacy of Ubuntu and Abantu comes to be represented within the work that you do. Give us some context in as far as that is concerned.
I think a lot of that is pretty much seen within our social impact work that we do within our business. So we have a lot of textile communities that we work with within the context of South Africa and as well as West Africa. And what we've done is that we've realized that working within a community makes the point of view so much more stronger. So really having the spirit within our point of view has allowed us to expand on it far beyond the communities that we work with within these respective regions and to see how we can bring it into different projects, such as the one that we're going to be exhibiting this evening.
Lovely stuff. As always, it's a pleasure. Thank you for the quick catch up. I know we had some connection issues, with the signal that side, and you obviously have a lot of work to do before today's opening. But we appreciate the time with you. That was Lucanyo Ndingi, and he is an internationally awarded South African designer. And really, his work has always been a vessel in which design acts as an instrument. And as you heard, Provenance Part 2 is opening at Constitution Hill tonight, and it's going to run until the 17th of June, and it's co-curated by a visual artist, Banele Koza, who is also a gallerist, and he does incredible work. So this should be a beautiful one, presented to you by The Manor, which is the brainchild of Trevor Stearman. So really, what I was saying about the new crop of cool, the new custodians of cool, coming together to bring to you what I'm sure is going to be an incredible exhibition, awakening all the sensories, as you say, as Lucanyo says, an ode to Bantu from a literature, music and textiles perspective. So if you can get to the Constitution Hill before the 17th of June to have a look at this offering, I'm sure, no doubt, it's going to be incredible. It's just gone 10 to 2 o'clock. Kids Corner is coming right up.
Hello friends, and welcome to another exciting episode of Nali Bali Season 9. Part of the magic of birthdays for us as children and adults are the moments when we receive and open gifts that we receive from our friends and loved ones, purchased or created just for us with love. Gifts are a way to connect with someone through giving to hopefully bring joy to their lives. But do you say thank you every time you receive a gift? When someone receives a gift, the appropriate thing to say is thank you, not necessarily for the gift itself, but for the act of giving. Now, before we listen to today's story called Nina's Birthday Chickens, written by Laurie and Preston, let's all get up and dance. Nina and her family were having breakfast in the kitchen.
It's almost your 9th birthday, Nina,
said her mom.
What would you like as a present?
Chickens,
replied Nina without hesitation.
Oh, not this again,
chuckled her dad.
Please, I've always dreamed of having pet chickens,
begged Nina.
Ugh, chickens are such weird pets. I much prefer dogs,
said her older brother Patrick as he patted his dog Max.
Well, Nina, your mom and I think that you're old enough now to take care of chickens on your own, so you can have pet chickens,
said her dad.
Thank you so much. I promise I'll take excellent care of my chickens,
exclaimed Nina. Her eyes sparkled with joy.
But what about Max? I don't think dogs and chickens get along,
said Patrick.
It's okay. We'll introduce them to each other slowly,
said Nina.
Well, first we need to build a chicken coop in the backyard,
said her dad. Nina's family spent the next week building the chicken coop. By the time they were done, the coop looked like a little wooden house on legs. Inside it had the roost for chickens to sleep on, trays to catch their poop, and feeders for their food and water. Her dad had also put a light in to keep them warm. When Nina's birthday arrived, her parents gave her 4 10-week-old chickens. Nina spent the whole day playing with her chickens. Patrick joined in. He had to admit that they really were adorable. That is until one of the chickens pooped on his foot.
Yuck! That's gross.
He moaned, hopping away in disgust.
I guess that's what chickens do,
said Nina with a giggle. Despite the poop accident, Patrick enjoyed spending time with the chickens, watching them scratching in the sand and flapping their wings. And much to their delight, Max the dog also got along just fine with Nina's new feathered friends.
I wonder which ones are female hens and which ones are male roosters,
said Patrick.
I hope they're all hens. Roosters make a dreadful noise,
said Nina's mom. Every morning, Nina would let the chickens out of the coop to roam around the garden, and every evening she would gather them back up and return them to the coop. As soon as she could tell them apart, Nina named the chickens Gip Gip, Penny, Lulu, and Doody. It was fun to watch them develop their own personalities. Gip Gip was the biggest. She was a brown hen that was always hungry. She was also rather bossy. Penny was a white and orange hen. She liked to eat from Nina's hand and was very friendly. Lulu was a very lazy, relaxed hen who preferred to nap in the sun rather than explore the garden. And then there was Doody. The family first discovered that Doody was a rooster when he began crowing in the early hours of the morning.
It's 3 o'clock in the morning.
Nina, you need to keep that rooster quiet.
Ugh, man.
Complained Nina's family when Doody's crowing woke them up. About a week later at breakfast, her dad said,
Nina, I'm sorry, but we have to return Doody to the farm coop.
No, please, let me try and keep him quiet,
cried Nina.
Okay, you have one chance, but if Doody wakes us up early again, he's going back to the farm,
said her dad. Nina knew that it was natural for roosters to crow, but she had to come up with a plan to keep Doody quiet in the early hours of the morning. Just the thought of losing a rooster made her cry.
Don't cry, Nina. I think I know how to fix the crowing problem,
said Patrick.
You do?
Yes, I've noticed that Doody follows Max everywhere. He drinks from his water bowl and even tries to eat his food. Doody thinks he's a dog,
said Patrick, grinning broadly.
You're right, he does,
giggled Nina.
Instead of putting Doody in the chicken coop, why don't you try tucking him in next to Max in his dog bed?
That's a great idea.
And guess what? From that night on, Doody slept like a baby in Max's dog bed. The family no longer had his loud cook-it-doodle-doo at 3 a.m. Instead, Doody started to crow at the much more reasonable hour at 6 o'clock in the morning.
Oh, Patrick, you're the best brother ever,
exclaimed Nina as she gave him a big hug.
Thank you so much.
And so we come to the end of another Nali Bali story time. Today's story was called Nina's Birthday Chickens, written by Laurie Ann Preston. Did you know that reading and telling stories to children at home can help them do better at school? If you want free stories to read to your children or for your children to enjoy on their own, visit Nali Bali website www.nalibali.org or Mobi site www.nalibali.mobi. You will find stories in 11 South African languages, as well as tips for reading and sharing stories with your children to grow their potential. Also look out for the bilingual Nali Bali Reading for Enjoyment supplements with great children's stories and activities available in newspapers. Nali Bali, it starts with a story.
Here, there, and everywhere. SAFM 104.6 FM in Tshwane.
In our top stories, Masinga granted bail and Polokwane Mayor's reaction on the shutdown. Good afternoon. Former National Assembly Speaker Nosiviwe Masinga has been granted bail. Magistrate Anna Oosterhuizen says it's in the interests of justice that the former speaker be released on bail. Masinga appeared before the Pretoria Magistrates Court, where she faces 12 counts of corruption in relation to the Prevention and Combating of Corrupt Activities Act and 1 count of money laundering. She's accused of soliciting bribes worth 4 million rand from a defence contractor during her tenure as Defence Minister. Oosterhuizen says the Criminal Procedure Act regulates what factors the court ought to take into consideration when considering bail. Oosterhuizen explains.
The court must weigh up the interest of justice against the right of the applicant in this matter and her personal right to freedom and any prejudice she might suffer if bail is not granted and she is detained. What is important for the court to consider is also the address of the state in this matter, that the applicant handed herself over to the police, and weighing all these factors, the court is then satisfied that the applicant did acquit herself of the onus, that it is in the interest of justice that she be released on bail.
Raj Balmakun, the CEO of the new Newland PX terminal at the Port of Durban, says it will help to alleviate freight congestion between the country's 2 economic hubs on the N3 between Johannesburg and Durban. He was addressing the media after President Cyril Ramaphosa officially opened the terminal. The terminal is Africa's largest multimodal rail, which is expected to strengthen intra-trade relations in Africa between South Africa and other African countries. Balmakun says the continent needs such development.
Throughout history, whenever there's been an evolution, there has been job losses, but they will obviously be absorbed with other opportunities that may exist within the economy. During construction, it did approximately 4,100 jobs. It has, post-construction, created just over 1,000 full-time jobs on the site.
The executive mayor of the Polokwane municipality in Limpopo, John Mpier, says although residents' demands for basic services are justified, he believes today's shutdown is politically motivated. The shutdown entails the suspension of the delivery of basic services. Several businesses have been closed in Polokwane. Residents blockaded roads with rubble. However, there is a heavy police presence in Polokwane. Mpier says water challenges will be resolved after the completion of the construction of a plant at the end of the year.
The issue of the shutdown is a political program for those who want to launch their campaigns in our city. Of course, there are genuine demands of the people that we are addressing the issue of water. So we are confident, as the municipality, that we would have an extra 10 megalitres into Sesheo. We've built a very beautiful state-of-the-art plant there.
Action SA has lashed out at the Speaker of the Ekurhuleni Council for abruptly postponing an extraordinary council meeting which was scheduled to take place this morning. A new mayor was supposed to have been elected following the removal of Sivuhile Ngodwana during a motion of no confidence vote last week. Action SA has brought the motion after accusing the former mayor of failing to address service delivery problems. Action SA Ekurhuleni caucus leader Siyanda Makubu says the postponement of the meeting is illegal.
Action SA must make it very clear that there is no ambiguity on this matter. The unilateral decision of the Speaker, an illegal decision that not only violates a council resolution to convene within 7 days, but also Rule 35(6) of the Standing Rules of Council that affords the Speaker a right to postpone or cancel a council meeting 72 hours before a scheduled council meeting is illegal in nature.
And finally, the multi-billion rand astronomy masterpiece, the Square Kilometre Array SKA and Karoo Array Meerkat telescopes in the Northern Cape, has additional construction projects underway. The SKA project will cost an estimated 40 billion rand to construct, while the 14-dish extension on the Meerkat will cost 900 million rand and will be co-funded by the German and Italian governments. Head of Meerkat Construction, Kobus Alex Kluter says these new extensions are larger dishes which will improve resolution.
You will see the meerkat extension dishes will go out quite further, much further than the few meerkat dishes that's on longer baselines. So it will increase the baseline and improve the resolution. So science-wise, that's a big thing for specific science cases that they are looking for longer baselines. Pulsars, of course, are looking towards more dishes in the core, but other science cases are looking for longer baselines, and that's exactly what the meerkat will do when we expand it.
Recapping the top story, the former National Assembly Speaker Nosiviwe Mapisa-Nqakula has been granted bail. Magistrate Anna Oosterhuizen says it's in the interests of justice that the former Speaker be released on bail. For SAFM News, I am Anne Musa.
The Full Circle with Bridget Masinga, Monday to Friday, 1 to 3 p.m.
The city of Cairo will be divided into two when Zamalek SC confronts their modern future. Zamalek strongly believe they are the kings of the city, but Modern Future want to display something special to conquer the Cairo derby. This is the second leg of the CAF Confederation Cup quarter-final. Catch Zamalek SC versus Modern Future, Sunday 7 April at 9 p.m. Live on SABC Sport on DTT Channel 4. Also available on SABC Plus and SABCSport.com. Hashtag we love it here. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport.
The Full Circle with Bridget Masinga, Monday to Friday, 1 to 3 p.m.
Phuma namkosi ndiyaphuma ndifihle kwingozi nentsha nayo yonke imimoya thatha indawo njengosomandla sindisa impilo yami kwababantu abalunganga kuba namhlanje ndibonile uba silwe nenyama silwa nemimoya namhlanje ndibonile uba asilwe nabantu thina silwa nemimoya asilwe nabantu thina asilwe nabantu thina silwa nemimoya asilwe nabantu thina asilwe nabantu thina silwa nemimoya silwa nemimoya silwa nemimoya silwa nemimoya silwa nemimoya silwa nemimoya ezinye izinto azilungi noma ungazama zibanjwe emoyeni ezimfazwe sizibonileyo aziqali namhlanje ziqale emoyeni ngoba emoyeni kuyaliwa emoyeni 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 kuyaliwa asilwe nabantu asilwe nabantu silwa nemimoya asilwe nabantu asilwe nabantu silwa nemimoya silwa nemimoya silwa nemimoya silwa nemimoya
A beautiful song. Oh man, what a piece of art this one is. It's Nati with Imimoya. He just has a way. He just has a way, man. The music he creates, the manner in which he performs it, he just has a way. And I just think he doesn't get the right kind of prominence and recognition. You know, he doesn't get the right moment in the sun, considering just the work that he puts out there. Imimoya is the name of the song. Asilwi nabantu thina sila ngemimoya. And that I think a lot of Africans can testify and resonate with that sentiment. You know what I mean? We fight with a spirit. It's just gone 10 past 2 o'clock. On the Full Circle with myself, Bridget Masinga, every single weekday, Monday to Friday, 1 till 3 o'clock, right here on SAFM, leading the conversation. We're joined now in conversation by Tibelo Mutswane, who is an attorney and the managing director of Collective Intelligence Legal Consultants and founder of a Sister and Law. And we are going to be talking around planning for divorce, how to financially prepare yourself for a divorce. I mean, we are one of those countries with a rather high divorce rate. You know, I don't know if it's continentally, but I just know we have a high divorce rate. And it's only prudent when you get into marriage. You know, no one gets into marriage because they want to get divorced. But ultimately, when you look at the statistics and the data, then you know that we get divorced a lot in South Africa, and so you must plan for it. 0614104107 if you have any thoughts and questions for our guests, 086 000 2032. Tibelo, how are you doing this afternoon?
Hi, Bridget. I'm very well, thank you. Thanks for having me, and hello to your listeners.
We thank you. We thank you for the time and ultimately the fabulous information that you're going to be sharing with us. Looking forward to it. Okay, let's start at the beginning. I've just alluded that we do have a rather high divorce rate in South Africa. And so I think, you know, you would be doing yourself a disservice if you enter marriage without ultimately also thinking about the risks and the pros and cons and perhaps the things that could go wrong and how you safeguard yourself from the onset.
Absolutely, Bridget. Also, you know, you and I have had this conversation before, but marriage is an extreme sport. So you do have to go into it sort of forecasting that there could be casualties along the way. And this conversation is as important as it would be in the event that marriage were terminated by death, right? Both kinds of termination, whether through divorce or death, do in fact, you know, cause a little bit of financial havoc in the beginning, you know, while you're just trying to find your feet post the death, post the divorce. So it is important, especially for women, to plan financially if they've started the conversation of a divorce with their partners.
Absolutely. And maybe before we get even to the end of our relationship, let's just recap, because I realize every time we have different shows on this particular little sideshow of ours, that ultimately the conversation around marriage and safeguarding, the conversations you and I have had in the past come up again. Let's just recap, Uguti. What must you do by way of what you must think of legally when you are proposed to and are ultimately going to get married? And then we'll deal about what must happen if you're getting divorced.
Thank you. One of the early conversations that, you know, partners should be having with one another before getting married is the conversation around marriage contracts, right? So if you get married without a marriage contract, the default system that applies in South Africa, whether it's a customary marriage, a civil marriage, or a civil union, if you get married without that marriage contract, then you're automatically married in community of property. If you want to avoid being married in community of property, then you have to get that antenuptial contract signed, which is basically the contract that is going to tell us, or rather inform the decisions that need to be made at the time that the marriage is dissolved, either through death or marriage. So that marriage contract is going to speak to what should happen to the assets of the respective parties, or the assets that were accumulated during marriage at the end of the marriage. So you can either get married out of community of property with accrual, or out of community of property without accrual. If you elect to get married with accrual, then it means that you guys retain your autonomy over your respective estates. Your debts and everything that you incur in your name belongs yours, but everything that you have accrued after the date of marriage, so during the marriage, is then what's going to be calculated at the end of the marriage. And the party whose estate has shown the least growth during the marriage will then be able to claim a portion of the party whose estate has shown the most growth during the marriage.
Yeah.
And then we have out of community of property without accrual, which is out and out, which we like, describing as out and out, which means that what's yours, Bridget, is yours. What's mine is mine. At the end of the marriage, we don't have any obligations towards each other. You don't have any claim to my assets. I don't have any claim to your assets. And we just really walk away with the apples that we came with into the marriage.
Difficult conversations for people to have, these ones. And yesterday we were having a conversation around finances with an influencer couple. And we got a very disturbing call from a lady who laid out a scenario which is very reminiscent of the complicated scenarios we've covered in our previous conversations. And she's basically worked herself into a three-way relationship with finances are up and down. And now she's incurring debt for someone else. And someone else who is a third wheel in your relationship. And now this is why I was like, let's begin here by understanding that when that ring goes on your finger or when that appointment is made to come see Abo Malume, the practical and real safeguarding conversation that you should be having as a couple.
Yeah. That is definitely the conversation around, marriage contracts. Without knowing the facts of this three-way relationship, my understanding is probably that the couple was married in community of property. A third party comes into the marriage. I want to assume that maybe it's a woman.
Yeah.
Her husband is now probably buying her cars, buying her an apartment, and that in turn affects the joint estate. Now the husband has lost his job or he's retrenched for whatever reason, and all these loans that were previously taken out to buy the third wheel, a car and an apartment, are now on the shoulders of the wife.
Yeah.
Right? Maybe something along those lines.
Yeah.
So definitely in order to safeguard your assets at the beginning of the marriage is by having the conversation of getting a marriage contract drafted, so that in the event that, one of your spouse is a little bit of a risk taker, whether it's business or personal, if they really have that appetite for, getting into loans, taking business risks, then it's important for you guys to elect to get married out of community of property, so that if something happens to your partner and they have got creditors or whatever the case is, then you will not be responsible as the party who was financially, savvy or just responsible financially during the marriage.
Yeah. I hope you've got your pen and papers on hand, or at very least you are recording this segment as we get some information from attorney and managing director of Collective Intelligence Legal Consultants. And of course, she's the founder of Sister-in-Law. Tibelo Mutswane is joining us via our Zoom line. So if you are watching on our social media platforms at SAFM Radio is where you can tune in. You'll get some much handy information. Let's talk now in the instance that divorce does arise, or conversations of divorce do arise in a marriage. And it's a difficult conversation to have. Then you couple it now with trying to plan. Firstly, when should I get my ducks in the row? If I'm pondering divorce, should I first disclose that I'm pondering divorce and then get my ducks in a row? Or should I get my ducks in a row and then disclose?
Bridget, sometimes the two can overlap, because depending on how you are married, it is going to be very important to have that conversation. If you're married in community of property, naturally your finances are intertwined, right?
Yeah.
So if there are debts and there was indeed, loans taken out to buy a third wheel property or whatever the case is, then you are, by consequence of being married in community of property, also liable for that debt, right? So one of the conversations that you need to have at the beginning of the conversation for divorce is, how are we going to now pay off the debts of the joint estate in a way that will enable us to also just go our separate ways? If there is then assets left after, we've paid off our creditors and paid off the debts of the joint estate, then obviously we can have the conversation of how to split our investments, our savings, and all other assets. So one of the important things that I like telling clients when they come to me and start having the conversation of divorces, right now, you're probably making a decision based on, emotions, and you're not looking forward or forward thinking into the ramifications of a divorce.
Yeah.
We know that a divorce is a costly exercise. Not only are you paying legal fees, but you're also going to have to drastically downgrade the quality of your life, right?
Yeah.
The fact remains that what was once a 2-income household is now going to be a 1-income household. And a lot of the time, it is actually the women who are then also tasked with taking the kids after the divorce, right? So that on its own is a costly exercise. Even if you have a situation where the father's, actively involved in the children's lives and he's contributing towards their upkeep, there are instances that are going to be blind spots that are going to require you to spend more than you would have anticipated to spend post-divorce. So the very important conversation or conversation you should be having with yourself is, are you financially ready to make that move? Because it is going to be a drastic downgrade financially.
All right, so that's the first question. Are you ready to make that move? And if the answer is yes, what's the next thing?
A lot of the time, the major asset that bears the center of communication or center of couples fighting is the matrimonial home, right?
Yes.
And if you're going to have the conversation around, okay, after the divorce, you will stay with the house and I'll buy you out. If you are the party who's buying out your spouse, you obviously need to make a financial commitment towards paying off your spouse's or your ex-spouse's half share of the property so that you can remain in the property. If you are the one who's moving out, you obviously have to factor in how much is rent at your new place going to be, or how much is the bond at your new place going to be. And a lot of the time, it is going to entail you to first move into a property that you'll be renting. So with that, you have to ask the question of, do you have that deposit that's required? I know a lot of the places more and more are starting to request 2 to 3 months deposit.
Yeah.
So do you have that 2 to 3 months deposit before you move out of home? Do you have a plan B? Basically, where are you going to stay after the divorce? That's one of the first conversations that you should be having with self. So you need to give yourself time. It's difficult to say whether you must give yourself 3 to 6 months or whether you must give yourself a year, because only you know your affordability. It can happen that you've just started working and then now you're going through divorce. And obviously that's going to be different to somebody who is an established career woman or a businessman who is able to then sort of make that kind of decision on a whim.
And when you Tibelo, when you bring up the issue of the marital home, or a lot of people don't get how contentious that can be unless you've gone through a divorce, right? Because you almost assume that everyone's going to function from a perspective of rational and reasoning.
Yeah. And the person you get married to is not the person you are facing when it's time to divorce. Two different people. I always hear, clients going on about how this person has changed overnight and, the person that they got married to would have never kicked her and the children out, or, whatever the case is, would have never kicked her out. But unfortunately, the person that you're facing during the divorce is a totally different person. So not everybody is going to come to the table being reasonable. And that's why I always say the best thing to do during a divorce is really, before even plucking up the courage to leave, is really have the honest conversation with your partner. Babe, you can see as things stand now, we've been fighting for years. We haven't been sleeping in the same room for 6 months. Naturally, our marriage has come to an end. How can we make this cost effective for us? That is the conversation that you should be having, that we cannot keep fighting anymore. The things that were making us fight have inevitably led to us now separating. So how can we make this cost effective? We cannot drag this out, because it's going to destabilize us as individuals, it's going to destabilize the children, and it's going to destabilize our families and possibly even our careers. So how can we make this cost effective? And one of the things that you can then start talking about is the house. And a lot of the time, I don't want to leave the house because I've really, contributed towards the renovation. My pension fund was used for the renovations. When I left my job and I got my severance, I used the retrenchment money for, so there's always those talks. I don't want to leave this house that I've built over the past 10 to 15 years. And then there's I'm not leaving the house because I'm the one who's been paying for it.
Yeah.
So it's always very difficult trying to just strike a nice balance between those two very valid conversations. But a good settlement is always going to lead in both of you being unhappy, right? So it's not always going to be fair.
Yeah.
It's not always going to be fair, but it really should allow you grace to sort of move forward on good footing.
Yeah. Listen, there's, some great legal advice that I got very early on, was that you're going to win some and you're going to lose some, and you need to be okay with knowing that you're going to lose some,
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And then let's also, just whilst we're still on the issue of the house, I think a lot of people also don't sort of come to the party in the sense of, how do we then rationally try to ascertain who's walking out with what, in that sort of buyout of the house? Because I find there's oftentimes confusion also. Uti, how is that worked out? Uti, what do I buy Tipilo out with if I'm buying her out of the house? Because people go, house is worth 2 million in the market, so give me 1 million. And that's not necessarily how it goes.
Yeah. So that conversation is basically centered around affordability. Naturally and honestly speaking, if you are not going to be able to afford that 2 million rand mansion after the divorce, then there's no need for you to fight for it. I know a lot of the times, couples, or rather, the party who has been the homemaker wants to keep the house. And one of the settlement, queries are, if we divorce, will you continue paying towards the house? And absolutely not, because at the same time, this person will also be going through their own financial transition. So you can't expect even the breadwinner to leave the house, continue paying for it, and also then go rent out property somewhere else, right? It's a little bit impractical. So it boils down to affordability. If you will be able to afford the buyout, or even if your partner says, you know what, don't buy me out, stay with the house, will you be able to afford those monthly, bond payments towards the house? And really, that is the question that you need to answer honestly before making that decision.
Yeah. Let's pause it there for a second as we get ready for the headline news. But 086 000 2032 or 0614104107 if you have any questions or perhaps comments in as far as planning for your divorce. And we're trying to look at the financial implications and challenges that divorces bring out here from a legal perspective. So if you have a point that you need clarity, you can sneak it in right now. And Musa standing by.
Good afternoon. Thanks, Bridget. In the headlines, former National Assembly Speaker Nosiviwe Masinga has been granted 50,000 rand bail. Magistrate Anna Wostenhuizen says it's in the interests of justice that the former speaker be released on bail. The ANC has vowed to take disciplinary action against any member of the party who may contravene the IEC's National Code of Conduct. And South Korea's government has ruled a transgender soldier who killed herself after being forcibly discharged from the military be classified as having died in the line of duty. I'll have details on these and other stories at 3.
Here, there, and everywhere. SAFM 105 FM in Polokwane. SAFM supports a litter-free South Africa. Play your part in keeping our surroundings and environment clean. SAFM, leading the conversation. Arts, culture, and robust conversations with Bridget Masinga.
So divorce is undoubtedly probably one of the most challenging life events that anyone can encounter, even if, my apologies, I just got the hiccups, even if both of you are in agreement that that's what's good for the relationship, it still does not take away from how difficult and challenging it can be. And of course, it can also present you with a lot of financial issues, you know what I mean? And so it's important to look at the financial planning, especially from a legal perspective, as an integral part of the divorce process. And we are in conversation this afternoon with attorney and managing director of Collective Intelligence Legal Consultants. She's also a founded sister-in-law on social media, so you can be in contact with her as she tries to share information, particularly with females around issues of marriage and divorce and the respective contracts, in the things that you need to consider before even you have the big day of celebration. Very, very important. We've actually spoken to Tibelo Mutswane quite a few times on the show, I think twice last year, in fact, and you can rewind back to those podcasts, and we discussed all kinds of things there pertaining to marriage. And she's back with us on our Zoom line. By the way, we are on social media. If you want to have a look at her beautiful face while she shares this information, you can log on to any of our handles across our social media platforms at SAFM Radio is where you can find us. And as we say, Tibelo, that financial planning is an integral part of the divorce process. I know we sound like, naysayers and gloomsday bringers when we talk about this and talk about why it needs to be considered even at the early stages of marriage when everything is happy. We're just tired of hearing the stories of how women, frankly, are getting messed around, and you need to consider these things. And you talk about 6 financial planning steps that one can take in order to ensure financial stability at this time. Run us through those.
Correct. All right. So, like I said at the beginning, whether you're married in or out of community of property, there is going to be a little bit of a downgrade that you're going to face post the divorce, and possibly even during the divorce proceedings, depending on how long the fight goes on for, if there is a fight, legal costs, which we know make the bulk of the costs leading up to actually getting that divorce decree. So one of the first things that you're encouraged to do is gather all the important financial documents and just get an understanding of where your finances stand as an individual and as a couple if you are married in community of property. So that will be your bank statements, your investment account, your tax returns, your retirement accounts, property deeds, and any other loan agreements and all of that. So get an understanding of finances by gathering all those documents and drawing a picture. You can even, get the assistance of a financial advisor who can probably help you or help draw a bigger picture of what your finances are looking like at that moment.
Okay.
Then sort of try to calculate your income and your expenses, especially what you want to forecast for post the divorce.
Okay.
I did mention that you would be downgrading from a 2-income household to a 1-income household. So obviously 20,000 Rand might look different when it's just your 20,000 Rand on its own without the assistance of your partner's financial contribution. So get an understanding of how far you can stretch that 20,000 Rand after the divorce proceedings. Create a budget. Budgeting is very important. In fact, I should have started with budgeting towards leaving your marriage. So create a budget that will obviously give you an understanding of how to navigate your finances going forward. Close all your joint accounts if you have joint accounts together. You can have a joint account even if you're not married in community of property.
Yeah.
And then once you've done that, one of the most important things that people tend to overlook is updating their wills, right? Just making sure that your spouse is no longer the sole beneficiary if they were the sole beneficiary. Making sure that if your spouse's siblings you no longer want your spouse's siblings to inherit, that you've removed them from your will, that you've added children that you may have not have added before.
Yeah.
Basically updating your will. And then also ensuring that your life policies are updated. So if your spouse was that nominated beneficiary, you might want to look into removing them as the nominated beneficiary and either putting a parent, a sibling, or your children. And then I already mentioned this, seek advice from a financial professional who will help you draw the bigger picture and help you with tips on how to navigate your new income household. And then, like I said at the beginning of our conversation, try to negotiate a settlement that will leave you feeling a little bit comfortable, but also a little bit uncomfortable.
Absolutely.
So it is very important to negotiate that settlement, because the main thing that settlement is going to allow you to do is to really do away with the process of having attorneys involved in the matter for a long time, right? If you can get to a point where your divorce will be uncontested, you are going to save a lot of legal costs in the running of the divorce.
Yeah. And let me tell you something, give you some advice for free. Those legal costs can run you into the tens of thousands, because every time Utibelo sends that email on your behalf to say, "Dear Mr. X, we await your response," we invoice that 3,500.
Bridget, not even the emails. The part that makes me laugh is that clients think that even the WhatsApps are just casual conversations. There's no such thing as a casual conversation. You are paying per text as well. If I'm responding to your WhatsApp in the middle of the night, it's not because I love my job. It's because I'm billing you for it.
Invoice and make sure you also apply for that court date, because Mr. X will tell you that he's in agreement, and then he'll dribble you and play games with you. But at least if Tibilo has applied for that court date, you know you're working towards a goal one way or another. You can see I've been down this journey before. Kabelo out in Mpumalanga, how are you? Is Kabelo there?
Yes, hello.
Hi, Puti. How are you?
I'm well, thanks. How are you, ma'am?
I'm great, thank you. It's in kapu.
Okay, ma'am. The part that made me laugh the most is the one that when the lady said the person that you get married to is not the person that you're gonna divorce one day.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I'm happily married, customary marriage. But soon we're going to go for a civil marriage. We're going to have the marriage contract in place.
Mm-hmm.
And then soon after that, we're going to be buying our first apartment. We're planning to buy it cash. So now my question is, to be on the safest side for rainy days, what would be the best way to register our first property? Would it be best for us to register it in both our names or our kids' names? Because the initial idea was to register it on our kids' names. We've got 2 kids, a boy and a girl.
Interesting. Okay, thank you, Kabelo.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, Kabelo. So a lot of the time, the advice that I give clients, especially if they're looking to purchase major assets together but want to be married out of community of property and still want to feel like they're building together, is to use a vehicle of a trust. So register a trust where you and your spouse become the beneficiaries and the children also become the beneficiaries. And then all major assets that you want to purchase for the family benefit must then be purchased under the trust. Then everybody gets to benefit from that asset even after the divorce. Best way to go about that, Kabelo, would be set up a trust and then purchase the property under the trust.
And that will definitely in itself, there's pros and cons to that as well. Can I just hold you for a second, Dibelo? Let me hold you for a second. Let Ashraf come in quick and give us highlights of what's coming up on his show. And then we'll come back and answer like 2 more questions. And then we'll release you to a very important schedule.
Masanda wanna trust their creativity to ensure Yanga gets nothing from Mzansi's capital city. But the gentlemen from the east want to leave Kabuyelo in tears. This is the second leg quarterfinal battle of the CAF Champions League. Experience Africa's beautiful game, Mamelodi Sundowns versus Young Africans, on Friday, 5 April at 8 p.m. Live on SABC Sport on DTT Channel 4. Also available on SABC Plus and SABCSport.com. # we love it here. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport. For the love of the game.
The May election is almost here. Prepare for a riveting election debate on the 5th of April 2024 this Friday at the Emalahleni City Hall in Mpumalanga. Tune in to SAFM from 12 to 2 p.m. as we unpack the state of service delivery in the province with various political leaders. You can also stream the debate live on our SABC News YouTube channel.
SAFM, leading the conversation. The Full Circle with Bridget Masinga. Monday to Friday, 1 to 3 p.m.
Ashraf is in the building. How are you doing today?
I certainly am. I'm very well indeed.
I'm fantastic. All righty, what's coming up?
Well, you could ask me, how's the country doing? And what's do you have a finger on the pulse of the nation? Well, we certainly do. We'll be talking about the former National Assembly Speaker, Nosiviwe Nkalkula, being granted this 50,000 rand bail, and there's implications on that, so we'll get a courtside view of that one. Monli Gungubela, also from government, will talk about the state of SOEs, which I think is really important, and it's a politically heavy show today. General Bantu Holomisa from the UDM, he's featured in our feature called the Political Monitor, or the Election Monitor, in fact, that comes up after 5. So every chance for people to ask questions to him directly as to whether they should vote for him or not. All that, fingers on the pulse, coming up on the National Pulse.
Lovely stuff. The National Pulse is coming up at 3 until 6 o'clock with Ashraf Ghadi. That is today, in just a matter of a few moments. Let's wrap it up with Tibilo Mutswane, who is our attorney, imparting some information on us, planning for your divorce.
Thank you, Bridget.
All right. So the other question that has come up is in the instance of customary law. When it comes to divorce, she laughs. What happens there?
No, I'm laughing because I wanted to throw a spanner into the works when Kabelo asked his question. But that's a separate conversation altogether. We've touched on this topic before of customary marriages. It is going to take a little bit of time for me to cover, what he shared with us. So let me move on to your question pertaining to customary marriages. And hopefully we can get another slot where we can unpack Kabelo's scenario.
Okay, we'll do that. So give us the highlights and then we'll come back for part 2 and we'll keep Kabelo's scenario so that when we jump into that conversation, we have a frame of reference. With customary marriages, if you did not go, you did not anhambanga nayo sayina. Exchange of cows and letters and celebrations. Is it then assumed that the rules apply when you separate? The rules of then a joint estate apply or not? Can I walk away without having claims to anything?
So a customary marriage has equal footing as a civil marriage or a civil union. So if you enter a customary marriage without having concluded an antenuptial contract, the marriage contract, then you are automatically married in community of property. whether or not you have signed at Home Affairs, whether or not you have registered that marriage, it is valid and you will be married in community of property. That's why a lot of the time the conversation that I push is that you should be signing that contract before the uncles even come to start causing havoc at your father's gate. That contract should be signed. So if the 3 requirements of a customary marriage have been met, 1 being you're over 18, 2, you've consented to being married under customary law, and 3, the union has been negotiated and celebrated in accordance with customary law, then you are married under customary marriage. And whether or not you have registered that marriage is valid. So a lot of the time the confusion comes in once a couple has completed a customary marriage, and then they think that formalizing it means that they then have to conclude a civil marriage. So you'll see people do their lobola negotiations and their lobola celebrations with us on Instagram, and then they'll say road to Mrs. Dlamini or whatever the case is. Not understanding that lobola celebration is indeed the 3rd requirement that solidifies or that meets or that satisfactorily meets the requirements of a customary marriage. So by the time you're doing road to Mrs. Dlamini, it is a little bit too late. You've already contracted and you are married in community of property.
What a difficult, and we will definitely try. You will let us know when your schedule allows so that we can sneak in some more in as far as our conversation is concerned, because we also didn't even get to the devaluing of your assets and hiding your assets and how that will lead you down a road that you don't want to be in. Yeah.
Absolutely. No, I'll be in touch with your producers, Bridget.
Thank you so much. Tibelo, as always, we appreciate the time and we appreciate the information. That was Tibelo Mutswane, and she is an attorney, of course, a founder of Sister-in-Law as well on social media. If you want to engage in some of the content that she shares with you there that pertains to marriages, marital contracts, divorces, and all the different themes that can come underneath that you must take heed of before you even start hashtagging road to Mrs. Dlamini. Let's pause it there and then we'll come back and wrap things up this afternoon.
2 kitchens, 2 home cooks, 2 chefs, a mystery bag of ingredients, 20 minutes, and 1 Mushe and Dicky. Put them all together and you have created Ready Steady Cook South Africa. Tune in weekdays to see 2 new faces battle it out in the kitchen with the help of some of South Africa's most iconic chefs, with Mushe bringing his wit and charisma to the Ready Steady Cook kitchen. Channel your inner 5-star chef on Ready Steady Cook South Africa. Starts Monday the 18th of March at 7 p.m. only on
Aston Villa have found comfort on the top half and they want maximum points to retain their decent position.
Put it back, and this time, Daniolo is on! The equaliser belongs to Aston Villa!
Yet the Bees want to cause havoc and deprive the Villains by registering an away victory.
Wissart tried one of them in the first half, he's finished it in the second, and Brentford have turned this round.
This is the Premier League. Catch the exciting clash between Aston Villa FC and Brentford FC on Saturday, 6 April at 3 p.m. Live on SABC3. Also available on SABC Plus and SABCSport.com. Hashtag We Love It Here. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport. For the love of the game.
Arts, culture, and robust conversations with Bridget Masinga.
We are catching up now with BIC Marketing Manager Amy Whittam, and BIC brings African talent to the forefront as at the first of its kind Metaverse Gallery in the region. How are you doing this afternoon, Amy? You good?
Hi, Bridget. I'm very good. How are you?
I'm fantastic, thank you. Listen, a lot of us are still trying to better understand, the metaverse and how things work. And here you are, from your commitment to empowering youth through creativity and self-expression. You are announcing the launch of a first-of-a-kind art gallery in the metaverse, in the metaverse in Africa.
That's correct. It's the Big Art Master Africa metaverse.
Oh, isn't Big the pens?
Yes, good old reliable pens.
Big the pens. So it's a first of its kind. Tell us a little bit more about this particular project.
Sure. So the Art Master Africa competition is an art competition that really encourages talent across Africa to express themselves and bring creativity to life through artwork that is simply created by the big ballpoint pen, right? It was originally incepted in 2017 in South Africa itself. And due to the outstanding success that we saw, it was then expanded out into the rest of Africa as well as the Middle East in 2021. So every year with this competition, there is a particular theme that participants are asked to bring to life through their artwork. And this year's theme is Ubuntu, or One Africa.
Yeah.
And what we're doing is we're encouraging participants to depict their understanding of Ubuntu, whether it's, the interconnectedness and the importance of community, or showcasing the diversity of Africa and the importance of unity.
Now that I've made the connection that it's Bic the pen, my mind automatically jumps to Nigerian multidisciplinary artist Jacqueline Suvaria, who's an illustrator, of mega portraits using a ballpoint pen. And really, it's a talent that I think a lot of artists tend to not explore, and just how incredible it is to create with a ballpoint pen.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, like you say, many artists revert to painting or using graphite pencils, but really the ballpoint pen really does act as a very efficient tool for, creating your expression and your creativity. And that's exactly what Art Master Africa is all about. It's all about getting the youth out there to create really engaging art pieces and really, show their self-expression.
Yeah. And you're doing a great job, as far as I understand, Amy, in terms of bridging the gap between traditional art forms and, of course, emerging digital platforms, because that's the direction that, art is now taking as well, is incorporating a lot of innovation into the process.
Yeah, absolutely. And the Art Master Africa Metaverse Gallery really adopts technological advancements and innovations to bring that art created by the African youth to the world. So through this Metaverse Gallery that we've created, artists in Africa will now get the chance to showcase their creativity globally and to a global audience.
And I mean, that's incredible, Amy. And, I absolutely love anything that speaks to also just bringing together different ways of creating and different generation perspectives of it. Now, you say it was incepted back in 2017, and obviously it's gone through quite the genesis and evolution in recent years. Tell us in terms of how Art Master Africa has now grown in the various territories.
Sure. So we know that it started off as very much a pen to paper initiative, and now with this metaverse gallery inception, it's really about taking the technological advancements and seeing how we can intersect creativity, technology, and innovation. We know that art is transforming and evolving, and this is evident in platforms like we see, such as the metaverse or AI tools that allow for people to create designs and artwork. So merging traditional and digital art is really phenomenal, and we are anticipating to see a lot of changes in the next few years as technological advancements continue to take place at a very fast pace. So the emergence of technology and innovation in the art world allows us to break down those barriers and enabling local and regional art to reach global audiences. Embracing these innovative solutions will continue to redefine how we at BIC create, share, and experience art globally as well.
Yeah. Now, in terms of this year's, a fabulous competition, the Art Master Africa, give us all the necessary details, in terms of where people, firstly, are they still eligible to still partake, those who are intrigued and interested, or is the collection already done and dusted and now it's just time for us to marvel in all the fabulousness?
No, absolutely not. It is still running. It started now and will continue until about June, July. So we have given our youth and our consumers a lot of time to submit their art. If they go onto the bic.co.za website, they will be able to find all the details regarding Art Master Africa, and they will be able to enter there.
Lovely stuff. Looking forward to this. This should be quite interesting. And by the way, let me just sneak this one in. Did BIC create a quite the unique metaverse specific for the Art Master Africa?
100%, yes.
Lovely stuff. Very exciting indeed. We appreciated the time with you. bic.co.za is where you can go if Amy has completely sparked your interest on this one. And who knows, you might be featured in this year's collection, which also includes other artists already, artists that are working currently. Tell me, just by way of our last minute, some of the artists that are involved in this year's collection. Amy? Oh, we've lost Amy. Okay. Well, I did kind of also make it sound like I was done with her, so it's not really Amy's fault. But yes, there are some other artists that are part of this collection that are practicing artists of the day. The likes of Cassius Gaupula and the likes of Thuso Modigela and Brendan Ponen, amongst other very talented artists. And you can go to bic.co.za if you are interested in taking part in the competition, the Art Master Africa. And as you heard Amy say, it was initiated back in 2017 and it expanded throughout the African continent, even reaching as far as the Middle East from 2021. And you challenged every year to create captivating artworks that are aligned, of course, with the theme of the day. And this year it's all about enchant everyday life, celebrate Africa. And those are the themes that you can respond to. Very interesting. Not a lot of artists actually draw using a ballpoint pen. Like I said, I can only make reference of one, and that is Jacqueline in Nigeria. And they say it's a difficult practice to do. But, you know, go on her Instagram page, by the way, and see just the detail of it. It's so incredible. That is it from myself and my team. Ashraf is coming through from 3 o'clock. He's going to be with you until 6. From us, though, we will see you tomorrow, Friday, as we wrap it up. We also have a town hall coming through tomorrow in the first hour of the show. And then between 2 and 3 o'clock, much excitement. We're bringing you an A-list star-studded show. Dare we say it's an international lineup on the Full Circle with myself, Bridget Masinga, tomorrow. Inshallah, God willing, we'll get to do it again.
The May election is almost here. Prepare for a riveting election debate on the 5th of April 2024 this Friday at the Emalahleni City Hall in Mpumalanga. Tune in to SAFM from 12 to 2 p.m. as we unpack the state of service delivery in the province with various political leaders. You can also stream the debate live on our SABC News YouTube channel.
SAFM, leading the conversation.
The Masked Singer South Africa is coming to a mall near you, and you can join in on the fun from 9 a.m. until 5 p.m. And you can catch it at the Blue Route Mall in Cape Town from the 4th until the 7th of April, and meet the masks, win awesome prizes, and channel your inner megastar with Season 2 of The Masked Singer South Africa, only on S3. Open up.
Hi, I'm Khomotso KG Mwekezi, and I believe in music's ability to connect, to heal, to remind, and to bring joy. And each week on my Saturday and Sunday show Seasons right here on SAFM, I endeavor to do just that. So join the movement of Seasons every Saturday and Sunday, 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. It's addictive. You might invite a friend. Seasons, only on SAFM 104 to 107 nationwide with me, KG Mwekezi. Because where words fail, music speaks.
Here, there, and everywhere. SAFM 105.6 FM in Palabora. SAFM supports a litter-free South Africa. Play your part in keeping our surroundings and environment clean. SAFM, leading the conversation.
In our top stories, former National Assembly Speaker granted bail and ANC members urged to uphold IEC Code of Conduct. Good afternoon. The former National Assembly Speaker Nosiviwe Masinga has been granted 50,000 rand bail. Magistrate Anna Oosterhuizen says it's in the interests of justice that the former Speaker be released on bail. Masinga appeared before the Pretoria Magistrates Court